You know, fuck me. Do you know some people actually consider me intelligent? You know, my therapist always says I have a great mind. People who've cared about me say I have a great mind. You know, but I am single-handedly one of the most self-destructive people you could ever meet in the eternity of the universe. You know, and my habits are so self-destructive, and I'm so hyper-aware of borderline everything about my personality. But you're telling me I didn't even realize I struggle with eating. You're telling me I couldn't even put together the pattern I have in my life, that I accept that for years of my life now, I've just been choosing shitty friendships because, fundamentally speaking, in my head, if I fix their life and if I'm always there for them and I'm just helpful, maybe they'll love me. You know? And every single fella that I've ever had feelings for, I only liked them because I knew they wouldn't want a relationship with me. You know? And I don't think I've ever loved anyone romantically, to be honest with you. But the person I had got the closest to loving, the only reason I even got that attached to him is because I knew we could never be together. You know? And my best friend, he said to me, he was like, Nisha, you've done so, like, Nisha, please just take care of yourself. You've done enough with caring about other people, you know? And I don't feel like I deserve food. When I'm stressed, I don't sleep, you know? I treat myself like I'm a walking corpse when I'm stressed, you know? And I keep on trying to relive what happened to me because I feel like I deserve it. You know, I've lied to myself and I've told myself that I love myself, you know? But the thing is, do I really love myself with all my if I have all these self-destructive habits? You know? And maybe I do cut people off too easily. But then all the people I've accepted into my life, except the people who've stayed around for a good bit, they're shitty. You know? And I don't think any of them ever even understood me. You know? And I also think it was wrong of me to try to use people to fill a void. You know? And you know what's terrifying to a really fucked up person like myself back in the day? If I actually have someone who gives a fuck about me, then they'll point out all my self-destructive habits, and then I'll have to admit to myself and accept to myself that I'm fucked up. You know, and then I'll have to accept to myself my mother abused me. You know, and I'll have to accept to myself that there were such obvious signs I was abused my whole childhood, yet no adult stepped in. Because the reality is they didn't give a fuck. They knew, but they didn't give a fuck. And I'll have to accept the reality that the systems that we have in place in the society, they don't actually give a fuck. You know? And there is something so terrifying to someone like me when you actually find someone who cares, because you're left with the fucking feeling of absolute hollowness because you realize how little anyone has ever cared about you in your entire life, you know? And the whole time I went chasing the feelings of love and care and affection in the wrong fucking places, while the reality is the only person who will ever love myself unconditionally in my life is going to be myself. You know, most kids, they have at least one of their parents who love them unconditionally. you know. And the reality is romantic partners are never going to love each other unconditionally, you know. And to be honest with you, it wouldn't be healthy if romantically you loved each other unconditionally, because if anything, that's like a codependency trauma bond situation, you know. And I'm probably going to die, and I'm going to end up dying without anyone ever understanding me, you know. And the only person I'm going to have to blame is myself, because I never let anyone in enough to actually understand me, you know. And it hurts. I'm really self-destructive, you know. I'm starting to love myself, and I actually mean it this time, you know. Like, I'm actually taking care of myself. Well, I'm trying to, at least. And the further away I get from my family, the happier I am, you know. And that's what I've noticed progressively throughout the years. You know, my bloodline is like poison, you know. And to be honest with you, I'm disgusted I'm even related to my mother, you know. And sometimes, for the longest time, I had this fantasy about changing my name, you know. Strangely enough, I take great pride in my name now, you know. Not my last name. Fucked a lot of those cunts, for the most part anyway. But my parents gave me a pretty name, to be fair. Like, I'm not going to say my middle name because I don't really feel the need, but my middle name just like fucking fits in perfectly, you know. You know, I hung out with a friend today. We got coffee or whatever, we got sandwiches. We just sat down, we talked. And she's a person who probably knew me back, like she knew me when I was back living with my mum or whatever, but because of how our schedules worked out, we don't really get to see each other a lot, you know. And we had the deep discussion or whatever. We had a deep discussion or whatever, right? And then I had mentioned something about an old friend of mine and something I do to make sure she was okay. And she's like, Nisha, you do realize how wrong that is, you know? And she's like, what about your safety? You know? And honestly, it hurts the amount of people who've rang me up when they wanted to kill themselves, you know? And I don't know. Like, I've rang people up when I want to kill myself. And maybe, hopefully I didn't fucking traumatize anyone, but I don't know. I don't know. The reality is, none of those people they never gave a fuck about me, you know? And I put all my energy and all my effort into making sure other people were okay, and they were the people who didn't even deserve it. You know, they were so self-destruct, like they were so traumatized themselves, they didn't even want to be better. Why was I trying so hard to fix their life when they didn't even want a okay life? You know, some people just accept being fucked up. You know, I like roses. You know, some people, they don't want my help. You know, and I hate when I listen to other people's advice on my situation. You know, because every time I've brought up my sister's life, it's really fucking brutal. It's really fucking sad. You know, but I knew from around the time I was 14 that I couldn't save her. And that was for the pure fact that she loved my mum so much, and I knew she wouldn't leave. And I said that to all these people, and I'd explained her life, and I explained how it would mentally torture me. And at the level of survivor's guilt I have isn't even funny. You know? And I'd explain that to them, And they'd be like, Nisha, you should be her carer. You know, and I popped her a message around a month ago now. I was like, checking, like, oh, how are you? And then I had mentioned the town I'd worked in, and then suddenly my mum shows up to my workplace. You know? I'm sick of saving people. I don't want to save people anymore. You know, I care about everyone in my life. I love them so deeply. You know? But I'm sick of trying to fucking hyper fix people's lives and be like, oh, I'm here for you and I'm never gonna leave, and all this stupid fucking shit with people who never even give a fuck about me, you know? Thing is, these people, they didn't want to put the effort to keep me in their life, but then suddenly when I leave their life, then there's issues, you know? The first guy I ever thought I loved, keyword thought, I didn't fucking love him, fuck that shit, hell no. But, fuck dogs and clucky, but first guy I ever thought I loved, you know? When he realised I moved on recently, he nearly had a heart attack. He nearly had a fucking heart attack. You know, like, obviously he wasn't like fucking, he obviously like wasn't about to like fucking fall on the floor to have a heart attack, you know? But just strange behaviour. You know, a lot of people just like keeping good people around. You know, they don't want to be good enough for you, they don't want to change for you, but they want you around, and they can't accept the fact that, oh, you have new friends and you're happy without them, and you know, you probably like have a new like fucking like fella or whatever. They can't accept that shit. You know, because they knew you were a good fucking person. They knew, fundamentally speaking, you helped them. You know, it's like, obviously they chose their own fucking pain and their own problems, their own baggage over you. But it's like, how dare you leave? You know? You know, I don't regret cutting off anyone. You know, maybe it's my hyper avoidant attachment style, but I don't miss anyone. You know, I feel a tremendous amount of guilt for my sisters. Well, not one, my only one, to be honest. But I don't miss them. I don't miss my mother. I don't miss fucking anyone. You know, the reality is, every single person I've loved and every single person I've cared about, if I actually valued them, they'd still be in my life. You know, if I fuck up, I'm going to make the effort to fix it. You know? I will do everything in my power to make sure the people I care about are still in my life. You know, and if I fuck up, I'll do anything to make up for it. You know? But this is the most peaceful my life has ever been. You know? And I never thought I'd reach this level of peace this early, but here we are. I'm slowly actually starting to love myself, you know. And I have this split where I feel unlovable, but then I also know I'm really lovable. I know I'm a person with many, many great qualities, you know, and I know anyone who I'm actually presently in the life of, they're lucky. You know, and I'm lucky to have them too, obviously. But I know I'm a very valuable person, and I know I'm a caring person. You know, I know how I am. You know, I used to get so nostalgic about my past. You know, just like around when I was like 14, I used to get so nostalgic. You know, but the reality is, my life was shit. You know, and the future is the best opportunity I will ever get. You know. And I'm going to live my life in the way that my future self would be so grateful, you know, because that's all I ever wanted, you know. And I want to be the best version of myself for everyone I love and care about, and for the kids I will have in the future, and for the kids I will take care of, like foster kids and stuff, like that, you know. And I know I'm going to die successful, you know. And a lot of people, they get confused when I say it, when I bring up the fact that I'm happy all the abuse happened to me, and I'm happy all the trauma happened to me, because it's made me into the person I am today. You know, people don't understand the levels of self-belief I have. You know, I love myself more than fucking Kanye West loves himself. I don't know if that's possible, but, you know. And I know every single person who I don't speak to anymore, they missed out on me. You know. And I don't even want to haunt people anymore. I don't feel the need for that. I've just moved on after that shit. Like, why does it matter if this shitty person misses me? It doesn't fucking matter, does it? You know? Logically speaking, they're a waste of my time, they're a waste of my effort, and, you know, some of them I wish them well or whatever, but, like, a lot of them, it's like, go fuck yourself. You know? Either way, I'm gonna leave it here. Bye-bye.